So there's usually two things that we do in everyday life. The first thing that we tend to do is we tend to move away from pain, right? What causes us to feel pain, what causes us to feel uncomfortable, what causes us to feel sad, what causes us to feel like, oh, you know what, it's just too hard, right? We tend to move away from that. And the second thing that we do in everyday life is we tend to move towards pleasure. So things like fun, excitement, happiness, things that actually make us feel good. That's why people, go to eat certain foods, because it makes them feel good, right? Something simple as that. But we don't like feeling pain. We like feeling good, feeling that pleasure things that we like to have in our lives. Welcome to the Tiffany Micah podcast. What we do here is build the strength and courage in you to accomplish your big dreams and goals in your sport. No longer will you feel limited. You won't feel you're not good enough. You won't question whether you will make it. Those doubts will disappear because you will have the competitive edge over your opponents and leave them in your wake. And the bonus is others will notice. Listen up and take notes, because I will show you exactly how to do it. Hey there, this is Tiff from Tiffany Micah podcast, and welcome to today's episode. So I've been really thinking about this, and there's certain people around in our family and friends and so on, and I think it's really good to observe people and observe actually how they respond to things. And what I've noticed a lot is that people are getting paralyzed. And I thought, I've got to talk about this today and really talk about what's paralyzing us, what's actually stopping us from going after things. I think this is really important. So it doesn't really matter how old you are listening to this. I want you to just be aware of what actually paralyzes you, and then I'm going to show you how we can work around that. Okay, so I really believe that there's actually one thing that actually holds us back. There's one thing that actually will stop us. It's one thing that can overwhelm us. And it's the one thing that can really take our big dreams and our big goals away from us. And that one thing is fear. Yep, it is fear. Something as simple as fear. So what is fear? What's a definition of fear? Well, a definition of fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the threat of danger, pain, or harm. So there's usually two things that we do in everyday life. The first thing that we tend to do is we tend to move away from pain, right? What causes us to feel pain, what causes us to feel uncomfortable, what causes us to feel sad, what causes us to feel like, oh, you know what, it's just too hard, right? We tend to move away from that. And the second thing that we do in everyday life is we tend to move towards pleasure. So things like fun, excitement, happiness, things that actually make us feel good. That's why people, go to eat certain foods, because it makes them feel good, right? Something simple as that. But we don't like feeling pain. We like feeling good, feeling that pleasure things that we like to have in our lives. So when we look at something and it hasn't happened, by the way, yet, I'm just explaining this. So when we look at something and when we want to do something and we know that it's going to be hard, we tend to avoid it because We know that it's going to be painful. But what we also avoid is because of what might happen. So we know that there's certain things that may happen only because we revert back to, feeling, uncomfortable. It's happened before. Then there's things that we avoid it because, it's that fear of what might happen, right? So what we have is these two types of fears. So that we have this fear of pain, and then we have this other fear, and that's that fear of the unknown. So when we have that fear of pain, it's unpleasant, right? It's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good at all. It's painful. Then we have this other fear of what could happen. It hasn't happened yet, but it could happen. And it's that fear of the unknown. So when you have done something or you've worked towards something that you've wanted and you didn't get it, there's pain involved, isn't there? But what also happens is there's that memory of that pain because you've experienced that before, right? That unpleasant emotion. It's incredibly painful. So when we've been down that road before and it didn't work out, we've already associated that pain to it, right? Because we've been through it. And then because we've been through that before and we've got to face it again, we know that we've got to go through that again. So there's always that fear that it won't work because we've been there before. We've been down that path before. Okay, it's a pattern. It's like a cycle. It keeps happening and reoccurring. So when we feel that fear, what actually starts to happen is we stop taking action. Because, like I've said, we've experienced it before. So we're not overly excited about going through that again because we have that fear. And it's that fear of pain. So there's that other fear that I was talking about that paralyzes us, and that's that fear of the unknown. So even though when we haven't experienced a particular event before, but we've had, maybe some similar experiences, but not really anything that we can refer back to, but we have some memories of pain, or we've had some previous disappointments, something that's similar, but even though we haven't actually been down that particular path before, we still have that fear. We're frightened that something bad might happen and mightn't work out. So what we have is we have these two fears that can paralyze us. We have that fear of pain because we've had it happen before, and we've got that fear of the unknown. It hasn't happened before, but it could happen, right? And when we feel that fear of the unknown, that can paralyze us. So because again, it's painful, isn't it? Now, there's actually a number of fears that we actually can experience. So there's the fear of failure, the fear of success, the fear of death, the fear of poverty, the fear of loss. But what I really want to talk to you around this fear is really the fear of pain and the fear of the unknown, because when we're in that state of that fear of pain, we get paralyzed. When we're in that state of that fear of the unknown, we get paralyzed. And what I mean by paralyzed, what I mean here is it actually stops us from taking action. And the reason that it stops us from taking action is because of this. We create stories around them. And I like to call them the what if stories. So when we get into a situation of fear in our minds, we go really crazy. Like we go berserk. Because we're creating all these weird stories of what could happen. That hasn't happened yet. But we do that. So, for example, if you think about the sport that you play, because I'll share another story with you shortly about some of the fears that I went through, especially with tennis when I was pursuing a tennis career. But when you're up against someone that you've been drawn against a player or a team that you've been drawn against to play, and you've played them before and you lost. You may have played them a number of times before and you've lost. And now you've been drawn to play them again. When you are in that fear mode, right, that fear mode of pain, because you've experienced it before, you reflect back to previous games or previous matches or tournaments or that previous event. And it's painful. And the reason that it's painful is because you lost. It is painful to lose. It's really hard on the ego. But what happens is when you get drawn against this person, you have this fear of pain, all these what-if stories arise, and it goes crazy in your head. You go, oh, okay, well, what happens if we get beaten again? Or what happens if I get beaten again? What happens if we play bad? Or what happens if I play bad? What happens if I can't move that well? What happens if I get injured? What happens if I let the team down again? What happens if I let myself down again? What happens if I let my parents down? What happens if I let my coaches down? What if, what if, what if? And the list can go on and on and on. But I want you to think about this. When you get into that what if stories place, where is your mind? It's in that place of fear, yes, but it's in defensive mode. It's in negative mode. It's in that protection mode, right? Because we're really, we're still primitive in lots of ways. Our brain hasn't evolved in lots of different ways. If you've actually looked at the research, we still respond in protective modes because we're designed to protect ourselves from danger, right? So when there's a fear that comes along and it's going to be painful, we want to protect ourselves. We want to defend ourselves. So how do we get out of that? How do we get out of that fear mode? How do we get out of that defensive mode, that protection mode, that negative mode? I'm going to show you after this next example. So what if in this situation you've been drawn against the best player or the best team in the tournament, or you're actually trying out for a team, right? You're wanting to get picked by a team, but you haven't actually done that before. You haven't played against the best team before. You haven't played against the best player before. You haven't done a tryout before. And it hasn't happened, right? And then you go into this state of what if stories. It's a different type of fear. It's a fear of the unknown. But what you'll find is you'll still think the same. What if I lose? What if I don't get picked? What if they don't want to pick me? What if I look like an idiot? What if I embarrass myself? What if? What if? What if? Where's the mind gone again? It's gone into that defensive, negative, protection mode. And we're in the fear of the unknown, aren't we? So I don't want you to think, oh, gee, there's something wrong with me because I create all these stories and I go into these what if stories of what could happen. It's normal, okay? It's normal to get into that mode. It's normal to think that way. It's normal to have those feelings around it because we all have fears. We all have doubts. We all have anxiety around certain events that may bring us pain. It's normal, okay? So I want you to get that clear. But the key in this is how do we get out of that fear mode into, well, what do we do next? Because we don't want the fear to consume us. Because it can. And I remember when I was pursuing my tennis career when I was, teenager and early 20s and so on, and I'd have this massive fear of losing because I never wanted to look like an idiot, right? I never wanted to embarrass myself. I never wanted to look like a beginner. I never wanted to look like I wasn't a world-class player. So I have all these stories. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if I lose? What if I embarrass myself? What if I don't look like the player that I know that I can be? What if I let my parents down? What if I let my coaches down? My parents have invested so much time and money into me. My coach has been there every step of the way. What if I left my coach down? Oh, what if, there was all these stories, right? And because I used to get so caught up in these what if stories, the fear, I actually got physically paralyzed. I would get to the point that I had created all these scenarios in my head of what could happen. And even if I've played against that person and lost previously, or what could happen, got into that state of fear, body started to paralyze, right, in the sense of I struggled to move my body. And it was like a physiological response, right? Body wouldn't work. Body wouldn't move to the tennis ball. Couldn't swing my arm with the racket to get to the ball. Felt like I could never get there because my body felt so heavy. And that was all because of all these stories I'd create in my head. And when I created all these stories in my head, these what-if stories, it actually stopped me from performing. Struggled in matches. Lost to people I shouldn't have had lost to. All of those kinds of things. But the problem was that I had in that time, we're talking like many years ago now, but in that time, I didn't know how to get myself out of that. So if you are finding that you are getting into this situation where you're creating all these stories about what could happen, they haven't happened, but what could happen, and that's okay. Like, I don't want you to think that I don't want you to anticipate some scenarios that could happen. But what I want you to do, though, is get your head out of thinking about the fear to the point where it's going to paralyze you from actually taking any action. Because there's two things that we're actually going to do here to stop that fear from actually paralyzing us. So number one is I want you to walk into the fire. And what I mean by that is I want you to have this mental approach that you're going to embrace the fear. I want you to ask yourself the question, what can I learn from this experience? Because this experience is not going to go away. So I want you to ask the question to yourself every time that you get into this state of fear about a situation that's going to be painful. You know it's going to be painful because you've experienced it before. And it's tough and it's scary to walk into the fire. It's so hard to face that fear. It's so hard to look at yourself, ruthlessly and evaluate actually what's going on. But I want you to just do it from an observer point of view. What can I learn from this experience? I'm going to step into the fire no matter what. I'm going to face this fear. And I'm going to see what I learned from this experience. Just go in there as an observer. Because if you don't step into the fire, if you don't walk into the fire, if you don't face that fear, it will reappear over and over again. So you might as well learn how to face it, okay? Because it's going to keep reoccurring. All those painful things that you've experienced, even the pain of that losing matches, it's going to happen again. You're not going to always win, as long as I'd love to say that you would, but at times that doesn't happen. And it's painful when you lose. It's painful when things don't go the way that you want them to. It's painful feeling embarrassed about what's just happened. I can tell you plenty of stories where I've felt incredibly embarrassed and it's been incredibly painful. But it's learning to face it and go, you know what? I've got to learn something from this experience. So you walk in, be the observer. Number two, what I want you to do here is I actually want you to embrace the feedback that you're actually going to get from this. So after you've, performed a match, what I want you to do, and something that's been painful for you, right? I want you to ask yourself the question is, what did I learn from this experience? And the reason that I want you to ask yourself this question is, what can I learn from this experience? Or what did I learn from this experience? Is because I want you to be able to get yourself into a position where you can prepare better for the next time. Because it's going to happen again. The fear of the unknown is going to happen again. The fear of the pain that you're going to experience is going to happen again. So why not learn from these experiences so that you can prepare yourself better next time? So what are some things that you can do? Well, you could make a list of the mindset attitude of what you need to have, your mindset approach of what you need to have when you're facing these fears. Rather than going to protection mode, okay, what can I do? Okay, this is going to be an experience. What can I learn from this experience? How can I get my head in gear? What have I got to say to myself? Come on, let's go. Let's step into the fire and face it. Let's bring it on. Come on, give me all you got. Right? Even something, something as simple as, last year we went skiing. And I spent months and months and months preparing my legs for skiing. And I did lots of cycling and I did lots of leg training, weight training, squats, lunges, heaps of work, right? Feeling the burn, right? It's painful, isn't it? Like when you're training hard and you're feeling the burn, it is tough. It's painful because it hurts, all right? It's physical pain. But I kept saying, come on, feel the pain, Tiff. Come on, feel it. Let's go. Come on, feel the burn. Feel the burn. What happened after I kept feeling the burn? By the time I got to actually go and ski, I was great. There was very minimal burn because I conditioned myself for it. So that's what we've got to do. We've got to condition ourselves for experiences that are going to occur. So we don't want to run away from them. Let's step into it, okay? I want you to also list a number of self-talk cues. Like, what are you going to say to yourself? Like, I said, come on, Tiff, embrace the burn, right? Feel the burn. Yeah, come on. Let's go more. Let's go harder, right? When you get in with that approach, you can deal with things so much better. And I want you to list a series of actions that you've got to have in place. There might be number one's mindset attitude. What specific thing are you going to say to yourself? Number two, self-talk cues. What are you going to say to step into the fire, so to speak? What actions are you going to take? You're going to jump up and down and shake your body around, and then you're going to take a nice deep breath and go. I want you to be thinking about how you're going to put those in place. Because when you approach fear from a different angle, it will stop you from being paralyzed, and it will get you into that taking action mode, facing that fear, and then you can deal with it. Because I never want you to run from pain, okay? Never run from fear. What I want you to do is walk towards it. I want you to think like a firefighter. What does a firefighter do? They walk towards the fire, don't they? They walk towards the fire and they go and solve the problem. So usually it's rescuing someone or something, isn't it? But they step into that. So what you'll be doing, he wants you to treat yourself like a firefighter. You are going to step in to the fire and solve the problem. And guess what? You're going to rescue yourself from that fear. You bet. Rescue yourself from that fear. So I hope you really enjoyed today's episode. I really wanted to talk to you about facing fear so that we are not paralyzing ourselves. We're actually moving forward, because I just see that so much that happens. We all have fears, but we've all got to learn how to deal with them, okay? So I'd love it if you could leave me a comment what you like best about what you heard today. And if you've got friends that you know that would benefit from these episodes, I'd really appreciate if you could share these with them. Just quickly, the Get Focused program's coming out very shortly. I will be telling you what it's all about next week. Just doing a little bit of fine tuning with it. Looking forward to sharing that with you because I want you out there accomplishing your big dreams, your big goals in your sport. And I want you to dream big, believe in you, and go after your dreams. Have an absolutely awesome day. Take care. Talk soon. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you haven't yet downloaded the #1 deadly mistake athletes make sure you go to tiffany-micah.com and download the #1 deadly mistake athletes make. Share with me what you like best about what you heard in the comments section wherever you hear this episode. Share with your friends that you know that would benefit from these episodes, and please leave a 5-star review wherever you hear these episodes. I would really appreciate it. Dream big, believe in you, go after your dreams. Have an absolutely awesome day.